Now it's time to ask Sarah Garner to take the stage.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
So Sarah is founder and CEO of Retykle, the Asia's leading resale platform for buying and selling designer children's and maternity clothing, accessories, and gear. But I leave it up to you. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, I thought there was going to be questions, but I can just talk a little bit
Yeah.
about my
No.
background maybe and why
Yeah.
I started the company.
Yeah, it's where we talked about. So it's just you and Jordana. So I see you later,
Sorry.
okay?
Okay, see you.
Okay, see you later.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Where are you based right now?
I'm seeing two of me. Hang on one second. I am in Hong Kong. What about you?
I'm in Florida, so for me it's 4:39 a.m.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, you look very fresh.
Yeah. No, I was actually super excited to speak with you. I actually have to say that I'm ashamed that I didn't know of it before, but as I started to research, I'm like, this is just genius. It blew my mind. So I'd love for you to first just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I am Sarah. I'm originally Canadian, or from Canada, I should say, but moved to Hong Kong in 2007. I've worked my whole career in fashion. So I started straight out of uni in a luxury department store called Holt Renfrew in Canada, and then have just worked in the field since then. So I worked for LVMH, Richemont, and here Lane Crawford, which is quite similar to Holt Renfrew in Canada. And then I started Retykle about 5 years ago. After witnessing the problem, I was trying to resolve myself firsthand, which is that kids never stop growing, and they have just loads of stuff that's of temporary use. And I really wanted to put the experience that I had had in corporate towards something more purposeful, and that was resolving a problem. And particularly the waste I had witnessed in fashion was pervasive, but I really thought in particular something of this sphere that was really of temporary use and could not be. It's just a very different thing with adult fashion when you think about owning something for a long time or making conscientious decisions. With kids, that sort of goes out the window because they last in something anywhere from 1 to maybe 9 months if you're lucky. So yeah, that's how Retykle was born, is to resolve the problem that I witnessed firsthand. But that's obviously an issue for all parents and all kids. So we're an online consignment platform, and we're endeavoring to take the hassle out of resale. So we're in Asia, secondhand is much less normative, much less common than in other parts of the world. So part of our mission was also creating conversation around secondhand and the desirability and aspiration that can be associated with doing good for the environment and keeping things in circulation. So not we didn't play on the sort of thrifting aspect as much as we did about the or accessibility to good brands at good prices, but really for us, the positioning and what we talk a lot about is the environmental benefits, particularly for our kids. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. I have a
that's us.
3-year-old. So I have a 3 and a 4-year-old, so the struggle is real, and I totally get it. They're
Yes.
growing every 2 fans. I don't know fit anymore, so I totally get it. What year did you say you launched?
2016 we launched, but I was 7 months pregnant with my second when we launched, so it was a little bit of a slow start. We really got going in 2017, 2018, and we've grown considerably within Hong Kong, changed a lot of minds, but now we're planning our international expansion. So we're hoping to be on the ground in Singapore in just a few months, and then from there start expanding into new markets.
That's awesome. And when you launched in 2017, like the reason I asked is because I feel like a lot of people are still so behind in this type of shopping, right? So back then, I would assume, I mean, I'm talking back then, like it's 20 years ago, but it's still like a few years back. Like I feel like people were slower in adapting all of these new business models. So did you like, what was it like when you started? Like, was it a hesitant, like, kind of what is this, or were people open to kind of figuring out more? Because I'm always speaking of the end consumer, and do they get it, do they understand the reasonings behind these types of companies? So just a little thought on that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think you always have to start with the first adopters and people who are probably closest to um, demanding what it is you're providing rather than trying to change mindsets at the beginning. So really we started with the Europeans in Hong Kong who missed shopping secondhand in their home markets. So we started with those that were not hard to change their mindsets, that we were offering them something that they it was a void in their lives otherwise. And then we worked slowly or as quickly as we could to change more and more circles beyond that initial core group. We were dominantly non-Chinese in the beginning in terms of both sellers and customers. Then we were able to convince many more Chinese sellers to join on, but this would have been a very new concept to them back in 2016, whereas like consignment shops in North America and in Europe are quite commonplace. This would have been the first time they would have heard of something like this. And then in the last 2 years, we've had another rung of adoption, because what's happened over time is we've worked to change one mindset at a time, and every time we change one mom, and it's predominantly moms, not dads, but once we've changed one mom's mindset, or they've adopted Retykle and they enjoy the experience, they tend to tell all of their circle, or a number of their circle. And I think that's the power of the individual. And we've seen that really incredibly with Retykle, is that never doubt the power of your own voice to change other people's mindsets, because our entire community and business has grown through the power of individuals that are advocating for secondhand and able to influence, let's say, the next 2-10 people in their circles. So we've really grown through sort of grassroots advocacy, with each mom doing their part to advocate for the next adopter. So we work very hard at making sure that it's a good experience, and that it doesn't feel compromised, and that we don't leave anyone with a feeling of ooh, secondhand, or feeling having any negativity around secondhand. So we that's our main priority, is just ensuring a good experience, so that word of mouth carries forth, and the advocacy.
That's amazing. When it comes to brands that like you probably see some of this, I don't know, similar brands, or brands that people tend to resell quite a bit. Do you ever look to partner with the brands to almost be like the second home to that brand? So when they sell it, they say, hey, is this something, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud. So if you, let's say, have Louis Vuitton, you tell them, hey, I'm going to be reselling a lot of pieces from Louis Vuitton for kids. Would you like to tell your client when they don't want it anymore that they can come? Like, do you do these types of partnerships or collaborations? Do you do B2B at all?
Yeah, so we really see, and I saw from the beginning that we needed and wanted to be friends with the brands. So we definitely wanted to be part of their ecosystem, as opposed to competing with their ecosystem. So one way we partner is sort of holding hands with them in terms of partnerships. So we tend to partner with the brands to walk traffic into their stores. So in Hong Kong, we have multiple brand partners that if someone drops off their clothing at that retail location, then they'll get a same day discount with that brand. So we're trying to reward people for creating that habit. And also, we work with the brands on their past season inventory. So as I knew from being in the industry for a long time, every brand has residual inventory at the end of the season. And it's quite difficult for brands, particularly luxury brands, to find trusted channels that won't deteriorate their brand image. And so we positioned ourselves as a friend to brands for their past season inventory clearance. And so we've worked with over 40 designer brands, and we help them clear their past season inventory. So same thing, just taking dead stock and putting it back in the cycle. And hopefully demand planning will get even better in the future, but for the time being, we do still have this pervasive residual inventory issue. And so a proportion, about 15 to 20% of our inventory is new, and it's either new coming from parents that they never got an opportunity to wear those, their kids never got an opportunity to wear those items, or it's coming from brands directly. So we are cultivating more relationships with the brands beyond that, but definitely see a symbiosis with brands and lots of value creation that we can have together.
That's awesome. Super cool. Now, yeah, I think collaboration is everything, both with the brand and also getting the consumer involved. So I think you're doing a great job at both. So congratulations. Super cool. So I do have a question. When it comes, so technology wise, what do you see with what you do? Like how important, how big of a role does technology take a play into what it is that you're building? And as you build and progress, just, can you share a little bit with us as far as the technology goes?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the hardest things is scaling handling of unique items. It's very challenging. So we've been working this whole 5 years at creating operational efficiencies, and part of those operational efficiencies are human operations. So just how we do things offline, but then the technology behind what we do has become very powerful and will become further and further investment to make sure. And basically at the crux of it is, how do you automate when you're a managed marketplace, when you're actually taking secondhand inventory and managing it on behalf of the seller? How do you process that inventory as quickly as possible? It's less important when you're dealing with luxury products that have a high resale value. The operational efficiency and the speed at which you list products is not as critical. But for us, with kids wear, the resale value is similar to a fast fashion listing price, and we're managing those items at an individual basis. So we've created things like pricing algorithms, automated SKU attribution. All of the behaviors around the seller activity is automated. So we look at every part of the operation timeline, and we try to cut out a human touch point as much as possible. So that's our objective with technology, is implementing that operational efficiency and scalability, and that goes to both the warehouse management, the way we load products to the site, the whole touching of product. So yeah, and then there's the other side that's on the consumer side, that we're really interested in all tech innovations for e-commerce. So we've used AI. We're using more AI to drive at how can you personalize and how can you augment an experience with a huge product assortment. So that you're cutting to what someone needs and wants as easily as possible, because the experience does become quite cumbersome and time inefficient if you have to go through hundreds of pages of listings. So yeah, tech innovations all around, and I'm really excited about what's happening in fashion in general. I think there's been a lot more innovation in the last year or two than I've seen in a decade. So yeah, it's been an exciting time for the industry, I think.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, you just totally. So right before our talk, I did a little speech about the future of fashion and experience technology, and the fast pace that we have taken towards it, since COVID has actually been, you look at, obviously there's a lot of devastating negative that happened, but there is a lot of positive that also came to play, which I totally agree with that. So talking about a little bit about that, and then I do want to ask you a question that I like to ask everybody, actually two. So we'll see if we have time. So when it comes to the pandemic, have you seen a big growth in people that are using your site? Because they do get, they profit by using it, so they get paid and they get to be sustainable. So have you seen, was it like a kind of a boom that happened during COVID? Did you see kind of a growth in that aspect?
Yeah, thankfully, yes. I mean, the big risk factor, I think, for secondhand was at the very beginning of COVID. So we being in where we were at the epicenter of the beginning. Basically, it was China first, and then came to us. So we felt the risks early on, and the major risk was that we had taken a lot of advancement. We had made a lot of advancement in terms of changing mindsets and adoption to secondhand. But particularly in Hong Kong and China, there was some very real apprehension around whether COVID could spread through textiles or any type of surface, and so that was a big business risk in the beginning. But thankfully, there was no scientific evidence to show that there could be transferability. But sometimes just the psychology could have been a risk factor. But once we got sort of through March and into April, we were able to see that that was not something that people were stopping their behavior of buying or selling. And then we did see a huge acceleration through COVID. We almost doubled our business through 2020, and that was well, there were three things basically. One was that there was a big acceleration in Hong Kong of e-commerce because we were primarily an offline market. So I think just generally globally, there was an increase in e-commerce, but that acceleration was even more pronounced in Hong Kong because it had been such an offline center. So we saw people moving into e-com, and there are not many options. And then the other was a very real and pronounced adoption or shift from sentiment to behavior in terms of sustainability initiatives. I think a lot of people sort of went like, one day I'll change my behaviors, or I'm sort of interested, but not willing to make any real habit changes. And through COVID, we saw an increased participation level and an increased interest in changing consumer habits for the environment. And then the other, as you mentioned, was more about the economic situation. Was we're discounted always, so we're 50 to 90% off, but most products on average are 80% off retail. So anyone that was feeling the pinch financially, we were also a cheaper alternative, or at least an alternative to fast fashion pricing. And then the other was the seller earnings. So also in conjunction with the economic ramifications, even a few $100 US is something. And so people were also looking in their closets to see if there was some sort of revenue attribution that they could get. So we benefited from sort of multiple macro factors, but ultimately, I think the shift towards caring about the environment was real, and we were an easy way to make a habit change that would have a positive impact.
That's amazing. I don't know how many minutes we have left, but I have this one question that I'm dying to ask on like a selfish level for myself, because I think you're such a powerhouse. It takes a lot. Like being an entrepreneur is not like something, I mean, it's something I feel like, I mean, as a co-founder myself, every day is something new, and it is not the easiest thing to do, not easy at all, actually. And you went from like working in the industry to becoming an entrepreneur. I feel like that's like a big, leap. And you did it so well and so effortlessly. From what it sounds like, I'm sure it took a lot of effort, but you just did it like so well. And you're a mom on top of it. So can you tell us, I mean, on a personal note, because I feel like people love to get to know the inside of who is Sarah rather than just the company, to really get an insight. But can you tell me just a little bit about what is the strength in you? Like, how do you balance, motherhood and entrepreneurship, especially at a time when everything was kind of like thrown up in the air and you have to keep the business going and you're a mom? Like, just give us a little insight in that, because I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, it's hard, and there's nothing's ever, I don't think, in perfect balance for sure. But I think one way, I guess, I transitioned easily into entrepreneurship is that I always felt like an entrepreneur, even in a corporate environment. I always felt like I wanted to sort of own accountability for as much of the business as I could. I really am a builder. I like building and owning process and being accountable. So that didn't feel scary to me. And then I guess that coupled with the fact that I really am driven by the purpose behind the business. And I think if it was profit motivated, I mean, of course it is a business, but if it was purely to build a business for the sake of profiteering, I don't know if I would have had the stamina to endure all the ups and downs, but I really feel that this is a worthwhile business to put out in the world that will ultimately have a profound impact, and also our community is really cheering us along. So I think that also really helps if you feel that you're in servitude to your community and you're doing something that they really want and would miss in their lives, and not trying to sell them something they don't need or don't benefit from. So I do think that in the low moments or times that it's been extremely challenging, the fact that we do get cheered on a lot by our community has been a huge motivator. The mom balance is hard. I mean, I don't have any secret sauce, but I just set limits. Like I leave the office basically at the same time every night. I block out time. I try to be as present as possible, but my kids are little. They're 4 and 6, and they demand a lot of attention as well. So yeah, I think it's just I grew up with an entrepreneur mom, and so I also had a model for what that looked like in life, and sort of some sort of path to how you balance both. But yeah, as much as partially I think I have some parts worked out. Nothing's ever in perfect harmony. I don't think anybody has it really sorted out fully, but I do think the purpose alignment has been really powerful to keep up the motivation and keep striving for the next step.
I have to say, you just spoke to my soul in so many ways. I feel like we have to be friends. I have to connect with you after this because everything you said, I mean, literally. So one, I have a 3 and a 4-year-old, so I totally get it. And two, I love, love, love that you mentioned an entrepreneurial mindset. You mentioned community, and you mentioned the why behind a business being more important than the profit. And funny enough, I read this book last night, The Go-Giver.
Oh, I don't know that
If you
one.
haven't,
Yeah,
this is you.
I'm writing it down.
Everything you did, it's like meant to be, because everything, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything you just said is literally in this book. And it's all about that. It's how you add value, you bring community, you do things to obviously profiting, but it's a profit to help more people, to give more opportunities. And you just amazing. Like you nailed it. And I love about like
I gotta
setting
read that
limits
book.
with like, oh, it's amazing. The Go-Giver. I read it last night. I can't talk enough about it. I'm all about that. So I'm all about that life in every way. So really good.
We're kindred spirits.
I know, totally are. I tell people all the time, I'm like, through community, if you do things with purpose, people feel it. They resonate. You create your tribe, but they stick with you because you're doing it for them. And you're profiting to keep a sustainable business and obviously to have a sustainable life for yourself. But it's also more important for us every time we hire a new employee to our team. It's like the best feeling in the world because you're giving them an opportunity to be able to also thrive, and to have that entrepreneurial like mindset, which I think is everything. When you started with that, I'm like, this is going somewhere really good. So I love everything you said. Really good. I think we are at time, but we're waiting for the speaker. So I do have one more question, which is, I ask this for everyone because I know it's going to be different. Everyone tells me a different answer, and I love that about it. But what does sustainability mean to you?
Gosh, there's so many things. I don't know if I have a good good answer for that, but I don't know. I think of
It's
it
your answer.
obviously in terms of fashion, but yeah, I don't know, longevity and I guess being conscientious and making sure that we're trying to restore and recuperate. And yeah, I don't know. There's I think it's so all encompassing. I think it's hard to say, but yeah, in a business context, obviously, as you said, like ensuring that the business itself is sustainable, so that we can have a sustainable objective environmentally. And I think a lot of people forget that it's, yeah, of course there's a huge place for NGOs, but in terms of businesses to be sustainable, they do have to be profitable, and they do ultimately need to be businesses to survive and to serve purpose. So yeah, I don't think that was the most eloquent answer, because it's quite a big big question, but yeah, in terms of businesses and sustainability, and then just in terms of women's work, because that was my field up until I started Retykle. Yeah, the sustainable wardrobes, I think, are such a big topic, and I don't know if you were covering this before I got on, but such a different mindset than shopping for kids. But I do think a sustainable wardrobe is also shopping with a very consumer conscious mindset, just around how long things will last in your wardrobe. I think we've forgotten that, just buying things with a view that you want to wear them for the next 10 years. So yeah, definitely lost sight of that over the last 10 plus years with fast fashion. I'm hoping that we'll get back to more classic, conscientious dressing.
Totally, 100%. And actually, it's funny. I actually, with my friends now, whenever I dispose of things, I call my neighbors and my friends, and I'm like, I'm disposing of things, do the same, and we'll have dinner, have wine, and we'll exchange. We do that all the time. Like, we literally exchange. So, yeah, and it's a good way to be sustainable, because it's hard, right, to know exactly what to shop sustainably. So, this was amazing. I loved it so much. Thank you.
Oh, so nice to see you and meet you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. We just have one question
we'll
from the audience. So Anina Net asks, what about the stigma in China about using used goods? I understand that Chinese do not want to use used goods, as they believe that the spirit inhabits the used.
Yeah, that's one of the big cultural issues that we have to navigate and circumvent to gain adoption in this part of the world. So absolutely right. It's not just China. It's actually quite common throughout Asia, but even more so in China. And what we've found, we've spoken to a lot of our Chinese customers and sellers, and tried to really deeply understand what that cultural stigma and belief is, and whether it's still as common as it was, and how to navigate it. So from our understanding, it's still very relevant. The other cultural belief is that you wouldn't shop secondhand, or you wouldn't receive secondhand, unless you have budget issues. So unless you're not able to afford new, we have come to learn that it's changing generationally. So typically, our customers or sellers who participate don't tend to tell their parents, so the grandparent generation would not approve, essentially. And then the mindsets are shifting from generation to generation. So our generation in the Chinese community has a much more openness, but their main motivation to changing their minds is not the brand accessibility, which might be sort of the perception, but it's the environmental benefit. So the Chinese consumers that participate with us are very motivated by the positive environmental impact that they will have. They do have apprehension around things like counterfeits. So that's why being an intermediary platform is really essential in this part of the world, as opposed to peer-to-peer. And not having those checks. So it's a very real cultural stigma, and we do have to navigate it, but we can see that it's changing with time. And the younger the mom, typically the more open she is to the idea of secondhand. And we've worked with, sorry, just to another point, we've worked with a lot of Chinese KOLs and known Chinese moms within the community that help dispel that stigma. So they act as ambassadors for secondhand, and they advocate for secondhand, and that also helps to change mindsets.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.